had, so we did the first try, right, in Michigan, right? Wisconsin, same thing, I guess, I don't know. So you did that, didn't make it, right? You were pregnant. And how'd that go, the pregnancy?
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old boy named English.
Okay, so got a kid out of it, good times. All right, and so you tried again, right? You said that you had multiple attempts. So the second time that you tried, was this the Cozumel?
Yep.
What was this like? Okay, so kind of take us through that. What was that like? What was your training block, same thing leading up to it? And how did the event go?
Cozumel was crazy. It's in September in Mexico, which means training through Texas summer.
Right, so hot, humid.
Yep, with
unbearable.
an 18-year-old, so I did a lot of training with pushing a stroller.
Okay.
I also hooked him up to the back of my bike and did a lot of resistance training pulling a wagon.
Okay.
But it was all solo, again, something I pulled off the internet. At the same time I was training for a marathon the next fall or the next winter, so I tried to kind of tackle 2 at once.
Okay.
So I had, running groups, but then I was pretty much solo for the swimming and the biking.
Okay. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is, for the first 2 times you did a lot of individual training, right? Like you were the one pushing the train, right? And I assume all of your runs, they were by yourself, all your cycling, was that how it was? Or did you have some people that rode with you sometimes or swam with you or what?
No, I was solo.
Okay.
Again, I had maybe some group runs on Saturday, but I didn't really
stay with the group?
Yeah.
Crazy, that's hard for me to believe. Okay, keep going, I'm sorry, I digress.
So yeah, a lot of solo time, unless it was, again, with the stroller or the wagon.
Okay, so how'd the event go? What kind of take us through Cozumel or Mexico, wherever you were at?
Leading up to the event was probably the most stressful 2 days of my life.
Okay.
We had to make some last minute flight changes because apparently there was a mandatory briefing that I was not prepared to attend. So we changed my flight the day before. I got an email 2 days before saying that my bike was in Lake Tahoe and not in Cozumel because we had shipped my bike.
That's a long way away. Yeah.
So I spent about 24 hours till somebody could tell me my bike was indeed in Mexico.
Wow.
We ended up flying to a different airport because it was in Cozumel, so I ended up flying to Cancun with my mom and then catching a ferry and running through the streets of Cozumel to make the briefing, which
just a warm up.
ended up not being mandatory. We had some hotel issues. So really I felt like I'd already done a half Ironman before the day even got there.
Sure, right.
But that day, my sister was actually doing a relay. So we got to swim together. We finished at the same time. We ran out together, so we got some great photos, always for the pictures.
Sure.
And
it's all about that IG.
Yeah, I was on the bike solo, so she was doing the swim and the run, and she had a friend biking for her. And so I did the bike portion, and it was windy, it was hot, but the people in Cozumel were so amazing. Like every aid station, they would just run up to you, are you okay? Can we get you anything? You need water, ice? It was great, and so got off the bike, still felt okay, threw up a little bit, but apparently that seems to be a theme for me at these races. But I felt okay. I felt like I was ready to go. My sister had waited in transition for me so we could run together.
Okay.
And we took off, and we ran as far as we could go.
How far was that?
7 miles.
7 miles. So you basically made it halfway through the run.
We made it to the turnaround, and it was miserable hot.
Yeah.
Again, Mexico, September, talking 90 plus degrees, plus the beachfront humidity. I had blisters that had taken over my entire foot. I bought shoes like the week before, which was
I'm hearing a lot of things that you don't do, but keep down. I'm sorry, I apologize. The coach in me is coming out. I'm just like, what? No, keep going. I'm sorry.
Everything you don't do for a race, chances are I've done it. But yeah, so we called it quits. I was done. My sister was tapped out. We decided we had a week to kill in Mexico, and we were gonna enjoy it rather than just push ourselves for another 6 miles.
Okay. So 2 races, right? You didn't finish, right? You trained for, you put through the effort. Both of them, the run kind of was the call or quits, right? So you made it through 2/3. Really, the last one, I mean, you were like 80% done with the race, 85% done with the race, right? So like, how did that affect you? Like, I mean, were you down in the mouth a little bit where you're just like, I'll just do it again? I mean, what was going through your head? What were you thinking about, say the next week, the next month? What was kind of like that thought process?
I didn't talk about it.
Okay.
For a while. It was rough on me to have that sense of failure, but not just that I couldn't do it, but that I just didn't.
Sure.
That I gave up on myself. So that was really hard. That took a lot out of me. And people are like, oh, where's your race recap? How did you do? Let's hear about it. And I was like, oh yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
And that was about all I would tell people.
Right. Because there's kind of like, I mean, I know I tell a lot of people all the time that when you're going to do something, one of the best things you can do is tell other people you're going to do it, right? Because it's kind of like an accountability thing, right?
Yeah.
It keeps you going. But then if you don't make it, right, you don't finish, well, then there's this like guilt, right? Or maybe, I don't know, this kind of like you've not just failed yourself, but like you failed other people. I don't know. Like that's how I've messed up and not gotten goals that I was trying to do as well, right? So that can be tough. That can be super tough. So so let's move on to the bike, right? So the day of, you get through the swim, right? You're a little slower than maybe you wanted to be, but not an issue, right? Make it through. You get to your transition. You get on the bike. Let's talk. What was the bike like, right? Was it? You didn't ride by yourself, right? You had a friend of yours ride with you. So kind of tell us about the bike.
So I had my friend Erica join me on the bike, and she was actually a supporter in Cozumel. So she came down with us and was part of like the cheer squad, if you will. She'd gotten into biking since then. Big avid cyclist, so she's actually been riding with me through a lot of my training rides.
Awesome.
She's a pusher, so she helps push me out of my comfort zone to make sure that I can hit my targets. But yeah, so we got on the bike. There were we had some started off again, you mentioned it was a little windy, it was cool, the weather was perfect. And then Erica had a flat.
Yeah.
And then like 2 blocks down the street, she had another flat.
Yep.
So I left her. We were about 12 miles in, and I took off. I knew that you were riding SAG with Adam, so she'd have support coming along. And I knew, at some point y'all would catch up. Either her bike would be fixed or she would just ride SAG with y'all.
Right.
So I think y'all caught me around mile 20. So I felt like I made some pretty decent time.
Yeah, we were driving. We're like, all right, let's go catch this chick. And we're like, did she make the right turn? Does she know where she's going? Because we can't find her. And then finally, eventually, we there she is. Okay, great. So yeah, you were moving. You're making some really good time, I felt like, anyway.
Yeah, so I felt really good. Even at the turnaround, I still felt, pretty confident in where we were. I think we were right on, I made the comment that we were right on pace.
Yep.
It was a little frustrating, not having a closed course, so having to stop and start for a lot of the lights.
Because that messes with your momentum, right? The
For
stopping and the starting. And then the whole mentality of it too, right? Just like, I could be half a block down the road right now, right? So, but on the turnaround point, that's pretty much where it started. Like, it turned from being nice and cool and whatever, and that's when it started getting a little warm, right?
Yeah, probably around mile 35, 36 is when I started to feel like, I think I'm not taking in enough water.
Yeah.
So I was kind of nervous that I was falling behind on, not necessarily nutrition at this point, but just hydration.
Well, I knew there was probably a problem when you started yelling at us, right? So when you were like taking it out on us, like, why are you in front of us? And then, why are you behind us? I'm like, what does this chick want? She wants us in front and behind? I don't know what's going on, right? So I knew you were getting agitated, right? So, and then I kept asking you, are you drinking water? And I thought you were going to throw water at me. It's like, excuse me, I apologize. Let me just sit in this chair with my arm hanging out the window. So all right, so you get to mile 30-ish, right? And you're starting to kind of feel the lack of water, right? That you should have been drinking more, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe even taking a little more nutrition in. So what else?
The wind. The wind started becoming a bigger factor. I think there were some points where, it was just a straight headwind, and it was all we could do to just, low gear, just pedal, keep the cadence high, but don't really necessarily push it.
Right, okay. So we get through the bike, or we get toward the end of the bike, and I remember, Adam and I were riding in your Jeep, and we turn onto Cypress Wood, right? And this is kind of the home stretch, right? And like I could tell, like just with you can usually tell body language, right? You can tell if somebody's feeling good or if they may be hurting just a little bit, right? And you had that look like, I no longer want to be doing this, right? And it felt like we stopped more. We had to stop at more lights, right, than we did in the beginning. And maybe it was just because of the time of day, there was more traffic, right? But I felt like we were stopping like every 30 seconds, right? So that didn't make it any better. Because I remember like we were stopped at one line. I think it was right when we made that turn onto Cypress Wood, and you were just kind of like your head was down, and your feet were on the ground, and you were just like shaking your head. And I'm like, oh, this chick better not quit on me. This chick better not quit on me. And you took off, and it was good. So, you know, what was that last, say, because I think it was the last 3 miles, because I was texting Leslie, because Leslie told me she'd come and run with you as well, and she was trying to figure out when to be there. And so I was like, oh, we only got 2 miles to go, so we'll be there in like 2 minutes, right? And it took a little longer, right, than 2 minutes, but and I think it was longer than 2 miles too. But you know, what was that last, like, what was that Cypress Wood stretch like? Because it was uphill too, I believe, right?
Yeah, so it finished uphill, and it was tough. There was a dump truck or a garbage truck. I think Erica thought at one point I wasn't looking up enough that she thought I was going to run into it. I mean, I saw it the whole time. I wasn't going to run into it.
Your head was down a lot.
It was.
Your head was down a lot.
Admittedly, it was, but I knew it was there. I think I was over it at one point that I whipped out in front of a car because I was just like, I'm done. I want to get off this bike.
Yeah, I made a comment to Adam that you were doing a lot of this. I was like, so she's probably getting extra distance in because she's like serpentining back and forth. So, but yeah, you were all over the place. But yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to be off the bike. Erica kept telling me we were almost done, and I think I even threatened to push her off because I knew I still had to run.
You're an angry little individual when you're tired. So, all right, so you finished the bike though, right? You made through, and if I remember correctly, you were right on time, right?
Yeah.
And actually, maybe even just a little bit of hair. Like, I mean, we had a little bit extra time in the transition because you know, you were right on time. So, so how do you feel like you pushed from the swim to the bike? You feel like you were putting forth the effort you wanted to put forth? Do you think maybe you went out too hard? Did you maybe not go out hard enough? What do you feel like those first 2 events, knowing that what was coming up, right? What was knowing that the run was coming and that you pretty much not made it ever past the run? Like, what was kind of your thought process when you were kind of getting done with the bike?
Going out on the bike, I felt like I was pacing pretty well.
Okay.
I was probably a little fast on the bike, but I knew I hadn't pushed myself really on the swim, so I didn't feel like I was overexerting on the bike.
Okay.
But as we got towards the end, I started to worry about, do I have enough energy? Like, have I conserved enough, or did I push too hard and now I'm paying for it and the run is just going to be awful?
Right. Okay. So, so kind of going back again, right? So you had Michigan, Wisconsin. You had Wisconsin. You had Mexico. Okay, didn't make those. And so when those were done, you had a morning season. You had a time of like reflection or whatever. And eventually you said, okay, I'm going to do this again. Right? You said you made a decision. I want to do this again. So kind of like, you know, what was that decision process like? You know, what happened after that? Because some pretty big stuff happened to you pretty recently after your Mexico thing, right? So kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, so Mexico, again, I was training for the marathon, and my only goal for that marathon was I wanted to feel good finishing. And who has that as a goal for a marathon? Like, right, who's like, I'm going to run 26 miles and be great.
Right, because it usually doesn't happen.
But no, that was my goal, and I felt great the next day. I went to work, because the Houston Marathon is on a Sunday. I went to work Monday morning. People were like, did you even run? And I was like, not only did I run, I PR'd, I felt amazing. So, you know, I had that going for me. And then a couple months later, I found out I was pregnant again with my daughter. So that was another successful pregnancy, and she's 3 now. And then, but part of her pregnancy, I was on hospitalized bed rest.
Okay.
So at 20 weeks, they said I was in labor, and I didn't know it. I thought I was just, you know, the cramping that comes along with pregnancy.
Right.
But no, they're like, you're in labor right now.
Wow.
So I had to have emergency surgery, and I was on bed rest for a total of 14 weeks, half of which were spent in the hospital.
Yeah.
But she came along, and things were great. About a month after she was born, she came early because of everything that was going on. So about a month, 2 months later, I started to do a 5K again.
Okay.
And so started running, thought, you know, this was going to be my comeback, but I just didn't have any motivation. It kind of all gone out the window. I was in a stressful job. I was dealing with 2 kids. Life was just crazy. And then I got a new job.
Yeah.
And that was exciting. A new stress, but that's where I met you, was boot camp at work. And then things were going really well. I was motivated. And then I had a stress fracture because, again, wasn't really training, but decided I'd do some races. And then I got sick out of the blue. It was my birthday. I wasn't feeling well at dinner. I'd gone for a swim. I was